Why do we love heroes? Is it the epic fight scenes that they have?
You sure this is what you want to do?
14 million, it's a lot of money.
Not if you can't spend it.
Is it the big hero moment when they save somebody?
Expecto Patronum!
And for villains, why do we root for them? Is it their strange ideals?
What is that for?
Would you hold still, please, sir?
You're out of your goddamn mind.
What?
This is all in your head. You're sick, twisted.
How can you say that?
You think you'll be remembered? You're a pathetic psychopath, begging for attention. You're gonna die.
Today, that is the question that me and my experts are going to tackle.
My name is Ariana C. Marcone. I have an English education BSED from Westchester University and a Master's of Arts in English Literature from Westchester as well. I've completed a thesis in literature, cognitive poetics, and I've also been an English teacher of high school this is my 7th year. I did my first 3 years at St. Elizabeth's High School and my latter 4 years, or going on the 4th, at charter school.
Hi, my name is Curtis King. I'm an adjunct instructor here at Wilmington University, and I teach in the College of Technology.
Sherlock Holmes has been portrayed in media over 250 times, making him the most portrayed literary human character in film and television history. Some people include Basil Rathbone, Robert Downey Jr., Benedict Cumberbatch, Christopher Lee, Michael Caine, Jeremy Brett, Ian McKellen, John Barrymore, Christopher Plummer, and Will Ferrell.
Sherlock Holmes is this sort of imperfect, extremely smart, extremely capable detective.
Okay, Sherlock Holmes is a detective for hire in Victorian England. He is highly intellectual and extremely flawed.
Who is also doesn't play by the rules and grungy, battling a drug addiction. I like that there's complexity to it. I like that he has a rawness to him, right? Very much this idea that he is not your typical superhero, right? Because I think in a lot of ways, if he didn't have some of these negative sides to him, you could sort of idealize him as this superhuman figure almost, right? I think the fact that he is complex makes him more of a true character that people can relate to.
Well, he's a captivating person. And the reason he's a captivating person is he's going to solve the mystery, and then he's going to present it to you. So that's what makes him worth coming back to book after book, movie after movie. You're in for an intellectual ride, and I think that's a lot of fun for an audience.
In all fairness, I think one bad aspect is the fact that he's almost written to be sort of codependent on this other character, right? Like, Sherlock in himself is not, it's really Sherlock and Watson, right? And so you have a character who probably could stand on his own, but it's not as strong because he needs sort of the other half of this duo to balance him out. I mean, I think if we ever really just experienced Sherlock on his own without Watson, without some of these other players involved, is it truly as good as it could be, right? And so you've written a character that is sort of dependent on others to create spaces for him.
A bad aspect about Sherlock Holmes is that he will never have a friend, save Dr. Watson. he is so isolated because of his intellect that he simply does not relate to other people. But that flaw makes him a very interesting person.
I think that you would have to tone down some of those negative aspects, the drug addiction, obviously, but you'd also have to make him more relatable, more charming, more able to interact with the everyday person. I think that Watson does a lot of this sort of cleanup act, and so you'd have to make it so that Sherlock was toned down in a way that he could do all of those things in one, and at that point, is he truly Sherlock, and would we still like him? Right? And so I don't know that in cleaning it up or in changing it to make it better, you still keep the same essence of the character.
I think I would give him another cohort that would help him solve problems, solve cases, and also be a confidant, his friend. I would give him a friend.
Norman Bates.
Norman Bates, the brilliantly constructed character that Alfred Hitchcock created for the movie Psycho.
Norman is supposed to be, it's hard because I think the title he's been given is a psycho, right? And he's supposed to be this character that embodies like extreme mental illness, and when that goes to the point of murder, right? He is supposed to be this murderer that lives at the Bates Motel, and he kills the people who stay at his motel that's off the beaten highway, and his mother abused him, and that trauma leads him to be a murderer.
Now, Norman, at first impression, is a decent guy, friendly guy, and he's running this kind of isolated hotel that he has inherited. So when we first meet him, he's a very helpful host. Wants to bring the guest, I think, a sandwich. You know, so right away the audience feels like he's a good guy. He's a great guy. But the arc of the story is about Norman being consumed by his alter ego, his mother. He has a duality personality. He has that disorder, multi-personality disorder. So as time goes on in the movie, the person that he is becoming is his overbearing, very cruel, probably, mother, who's a murderer. So the question is always, is Norman the murderer, or is Norman's mother the murderer?
I think this character was, and I can't say for certain, but I believe that they were one of the first characters to really play into the idea that psychological trauma could manifest in a way that it presented as sort of multiple personalities or dissociative identity disorder, right? And so I think it's really interesting, this idea of playing with the mind, and not sort of in this way that they are just deranged for deranged sake, or they're just evil, right? But it's this idea that they went through something, they broke, and it's not just that break that then causes them to murder, it's how they've sort of come back together after that break, and that pushes them, right? And so I think it's a really interesting character in that sense, especially when you consider the time period.
What I like about Norman is he's a complex guy. So one of the things that Hitchcock does when we first meet Norman, we meet his hobby. He's a taxidermist. You know, and so right away, he's a little quirky. And I really like that about him. And he seems to be genuinely kind. And that's what I like about him. You know, he's a tragic figure.
while I think it is novel of the time period, and again, I don't know everything, so it may not be the first, but it feels like it. I do think that you have a character in which, you know, his whole countenance is supposed to change, his voice, his everything is supposed to change, and to become his mother, right? This awful woman who tortured him. And in some ways, it feels, I think, too obvious. I think it's too obvious. I think that newer generations who are reading it or viewing it, how do you believe that he is able to do this in a way that fools other people wholeheartedly, right? That he, it's too simplistic is what it feels like to me. I think you have to look at what you're claiming as far as the trauma that he experienced and how it's manifested into this sort of split psyche. And I think you have to dive deeper than just, oh, he's internalized his mother's voice. And therefore, he's, you know, talking to himself at once, and one side's his mother, and he truly believes she's there, and that's how he's sort of dissociating through it. I think that you have to dive deeper, and honestly, I don't know that you stay with that concept to some degree. I think that you pivot slightly. I think keep the trauma of the mother and everything that's there, but I think that you have to go past just, oh, it splits his psyche. There has to be, I'd love for there to be almost an outside element, something else.
I think I would make him more devious. Because as written, he's simply a victim of his psychosis. But if I thought, well, what would I do? I would make him more, I think I would make him more frightening. I would make him more suspect. He does watch his guest. I might amp that up.
I appreciate a very complex character. I think that they should have depth to them, and by that I mean I don't want them to just be a good guy or a bad guy. I want them to have the ability to be human, which means that you are all of those things in one. It makes me think of Orwell's Burmese Days, in which he writes about sort of his time as an imperial officer, and in it, there is no single good character. I mean, you want to root for the protagonist, though he's a coward, and I think that those characters, those stories stick because they are so true to the human experience and yet recreated in either a fictional setting or recreated in a way that you can't believe that someone was able to capture all of what is the human experience in that character in written form or even in sort of an acted form.
Well, the key to having an audience relate to a character is empathy. So what you have to do is create something in any character that someone in the audience, or as a writer, they have to be relatable somehow. So everyone in the audience has to look at the screen and say, "That's me up there. That person's just like me." And the "just like me" part simply is everybody is imperfect. So the imperfections of a character are infectious. The more stumbling a character does, the more the audience tends to root for them, to empathize with them. So if you're developing a character, the key ingredient is their foibles, their flaws, the things that they make mistakes doing. Because that, I think, that defines people. If you're thinking about like your friends, generally your friends aren't perfect, but you put up with them anyway. So that's what you'd have to do with the character. You have to create this imperfect character that the audience is going to put up with them. The thing I'm driving at is there's a quality that a character has that people in the audience can relate to, and it's usually something is wrong. You know, something they have to overcome. Like everybody has to overcome something, and that's what makes them relatable. That's what makes them a good character. Even the Marvel, this is like off the cuff, even the Marvel super hero cadre, they all have something wrong with them. You know, and that's what makes those things watchable. You know, the plots are terrible, but the characters are kind of fun.